It's all quiet in the underground bunker. Doors closed, locks bolted. But the Great One isn't just resting on his laurels. He's making sure your weekend is even better by giving you his best. This is the best of Mark Levin.
I am 100% COVID-free, and so we needed a little extra time to take care of that, and we did. All right. Welcome back. You're watching what's taking place, obviously. Many of you with great attention. Joe Biden, should he run or shouldn't he? You're watching the Democrats duke it out, kind of. Well, here's what I want to do. I want to put a fine point on what's actually going on here. When you listen to these debates, when you listen to the discussion, even by the good guys, the issue is never what's best for the country. The issue is always what's best for the Democrat Party or not. The way that this is phrased is, will he hurt Democrats, down ticket? You have some close Senate elections. Will he push those toward the Republicans? He's very, very low in the polls and going lower and lower. You have Democrats who believe that he needs to stay in because only he can beat Trump. Democrats say, we can't beat Trump, he's got to go. What's best for the United States of America? This is in kind with what I've told you, that the Democrat Party is about party first. They knew, the Democrats and their media, they knew to a man and a woman that Biden was suffering from dementia. But with deceit and censorship, denial, and yes, intimidation, the most radical agenda and policies would continue despite his dementia if they could get through the election. And they know that the government isn't actually run by Joe Biden. They run around Joe Biden. It's led by a cabal of unnamed, faceless revolutionaries and powerful bureaucrats. The debate stripped it all away. The propaganda, the layers of lies and deceit. 50 million people, tens of millions who would not otherwise have watched, saw Biden for what he was and what he is. They saw it. They heard it. So the New York Times, CNN, the media, which are the Democrat Party, which lead the Democrat Party, not the other way around, said for the sake of the party, he's got to go. Then the diehards who say, no, for the sake of the party, he's got to stay. He's got to stay. We'll vote for him no matter what. For the party, anything goes. Any kind of rhetoric, calling your opponent Hitler and so forth, character assassination, lawfare, all the rest of it. It's for the party, not the country. And when you listen to these Democrats speak, both the official Democrats and the media Democrats, if you substitute party for country or country for party, you get a better idea of what they're talking about. This is the Marxist mindset. The party is more important than the country. The country is what the party decides it shall be. The presidency itself, the Constitution, the free press, separation of power, none of it matters. How many years have we been told about CRT and DEI? How many years we've been told that the Constitution is nothing more than a document of slaveholders to enshrine their own power. How many years? Now, I'll further prove the point. Who would take up the cudgel of the presidential candidacy if Biden decides not to run? It would be Kamala Harris. There's not another Democrat of any weight or substance who will decide to take her on. They'll wait their turn. Why? Because all their talk about women and men being one and the same and things ought not be genitalia specific, that's all BS. That's for the masses. That's for the plebes out there. But for them, they have their first woman vice president. They want to campaign on her being the first woman president. They want to run on abortion. And of course, they want to run that she be the first black. Now, I've said before, she's not an African American unless you go back generation after generation after generation. She's not popular in African American communities. She did not light a fire under the African American community when she ran for the Democrat nomination for president in 2016. She was the first to drop out. She's still weak, but that's not my point. My point is this. Kamala Harris is not qualified to be president. She's not qualified to be president, not because of some technicality in the Constitution. She has spent 4 years covering up Joe Biden's dementia. She's been a loyal liar, propagandist, censor to the American people about Biden's fitness, his sharpness, his wisdom, his decision-making. And whenever she was asked, she lied. Other times when she wasn't asked, she voluntarily lied. Harris lied scores of times to the American people for the purpose of deceiving the public. And she did it through all the Democratic primaries, even days after disastrous Biden presidential debate. She lied. This in of itself is disqualifying, but it's much worse. The indisputable fact is that our Constitution cannot properly work when the Vice President of the United States is nothing more than a self-serving, dishonest, reliable propagandist for an incapacitated president and her party, the Democrat Party. The 25th Amendment was drafted, adopted, ratified to specifically address, among other things, this situation. That is, where the president is not able to competently undertake his immensely important duties, which are uniquely vested in his office. He's the unitary head of the entire executive branch with enormous responsibilities. Now, Kamala Harris has known Joe Biden's condition, but she's put her own political ambitions and those of her party ahead of the constitutional duties for which she swore an oath of office. She's disqualified. Even today, as I speak, where the debate goes on throughout the nation about Joe Biden's dementia, about the fact that now 8 times a Parkinson's disease neurologist, an expert, visited the White House. As the evidence piles up further and further, she has no intention of calling a meeting of the cabinet to address this. Without the leadership of the vice president, the 25th Amendment is a dead amendment. In other words, unless the vice president, working with the cabinet, takes the steps outlined in the 25th Amendment to remove an incapacitated president and triggers the process to do so by involving Congress in a very public way, then the entire purpose of the amendment and the process set out in the amendment are defeated. And right up to now, she has no intention of carrying out her duty as vice president under the Constitution. And this is the biggest duty she has. Is there anybody other than the most diehard zealots who believes that Biden is qualified to run for re-election? Other than Karen Goldberg, a.k.a. Whoopi Goldberg and her ilk? And if he's not qualified to run for re-election, given his diminished mental capacity, he's certainly not qualified to remain as president. The fact is that Harris, through her lies and deceit, and her failure to uphold her constitutional duty under the 25th Amendment, is hugely responsible for putting our country in this precarious and unprecedented situation. And the idea that she is to be somehow rewarded as the next in line for the Democrat Party nomination, should Biden bow out, is appalling. But notice the media don't even mention what I'm telling you. None of them. Notice the Democrats don't mention what I'm telling you. Notice their surrogates are silent because they don't care about the country or the Constitution. She has demonstrated in real time that her own political aspirations are more important to her than the well-being of the nation. Day after day, as the second most powerful executive branch official, she has witnessed firsthand Biden's dementia. Yet at no time was she moved to safeguard the country and follow the Constitution. She is complicit in this greatest of cover-ups, and even now doesn't lift a finger to undertake her most important duty as vice president. And but for the debate, she was more than happy to continue this ruse. It's unconscionable what the media have done to our country by covering for Biden and the Democrat Party and engaging in this massive cover-up. But even now, as parts of the media turn on Biden because they think he can't win, they're worried about their party. Harris still has done nothing to address the ongoing danger to our nation. Why? But Mark, if she triggers the 25th Amendment and Biden's removed, she becomes president. Ah, yes. But not for long. The party regulars, the party activists, they will condemn her. She wants nothing to do with it. She wants to be handed the presidential nomination by Biden at the convention. Or if he's reelected, she's there just in case to step in. But unlike the horrendously corrupt American media, the Pravda, the Al Jazeera that is ours, Harris has a continuing constitutional duty, which she simply will not uphold. And so today, America faces a twofold constitutional crisis. A president who's not competent to be president, and a vice president who refuses to uphold the Constitution of the United States. Because neither are in the best interests of the Democrat Party, only the country.
Mark Levin.
Making your weekend even better. This is the best of Mark Levin.
There was a time, America, when the Democrats thought physical and mental health of a president were of national security importance. Jamie, the Marxist Raskin, used to think that. In fact, he said it in 2017 as he was trying to destroy the presidency of Donald Trump. For example, cut 11, Mr. Producer, go.
To set up a permanent body, not just for this presidency, but for all presidencies to come. The physical health of the president, the mental health of the president is something of fundamental importance to the national security of the country and the continuing effectiveness of the government. So I think that, some of the current events have concentrated our mind on the problem, but we need to set this up as a matter of institutional responsibility as Congress.
Oh, really? This guy is such a sleazeball. That's right, you're a sleazeball. And I want to give a hat tip to Representative Mike Lawler, Janet Yellen was at a hearing today, the so-called Secretary of the Treasury, and he is the first one, at least publicly, as far as I know, to ask the critical question. Cut one, go.
Madam Secretary, have there been any discussions among cabinet secretaries about invoking the 25th Amendment?
No.
No. No, I'm going to continue to push this issue, ladies and gentlemen, because this is an issue that deserves attention. Serious attention. And this is not good enough. So there hasn't been a single discussion among cabinet members, and of course Kamala Harris, as the theory of the absurd with a president who's dementia-ridden, and we keep following the Democrats, who's for, who's against. Who's against, who's for. Seriously. And so is this going to be the discussion for the rest of the time now? Until the Democrats decide? Well, one would hope not, but I think at least for a while. But the Democrats want to make sure, no matter what, no matter who they run, that they will win. From the Blaze, 10% of illegal aliens admit they're registered to vote. Heritage Foundation survey. Candace Hathaway, investigation uncovers threat to election integrity. A survey conducted by the Heritage Foundation's Oversight Project found that 10% of illegal aliens and non-citizens stated that they're registered to vote in the upcoming election. They said they are. And, of course, they're provided with every opportunity, aren't they? In a video posted to X on July 4th, Mike Howell, the Oversight Project's executive director, stated, "My fellow Americans, today we're calling on all of you to declare independence from foreigners deciding our elections. The evidence you're about to see relates to illegal aliens being registered to vote. This is a problem of national in scale. The United States of America is for Americans, and our elections only should be decided by Americans." Muckraker.com reported that it interviewed dozens of individuals residing at a Charlotte, North Carolina apartment complex primarily occupied by illegal aliens. A hidden camera captured several interviews with residents who claimed to be non-citizens but who registered to vote. "We come with a group, an organization that is trying to help register Hispanic people to vote, because in a few months we will be voting for governor or president," the interviewees told them. Anthony Rubin, the founder of Muckraker, explained, "We visited the apartment complex to ask residents two questions. Are you registered to vote? And are you a citizen?" Shockingly, 4 of the 41 people we asked confirmed that they were non-citizen and registered to vote. If this proportion holds true nationwide, the integrity of the 2024 election is in jeopardy. And then you're asked, if you go to court, can you prove it? Can you prove what? We don't have the names of these tens of thousands of people, the locations. We don't have access to the kind of information you need to provide for evidence in a court. This is a whole scam. It's a sham. The whole thing's a setup. During an interview on Real America's Voice, the War Room, Hal stated, "The borders have been wide open. We've been told by the left and the mainstream media that poses no threat to the integrity of our election system. We've been told that it's a conspiracy theory." And he noted in a report containing the survey's findings that it was sent to states, governors, and attorneys general. And I'm sure most of them did absolutely nothing with it. Absolutely nothing. So this is ongoing. It is ubiquitous. And this is why, also reported in the Blaze, Julio Rosas, Biden comes out against voter ID bill that prevents illegal immigrants from voting. Now, you got to blow off the media and these phony judges and former attorneys general. I don't see any fraud here. I'm not aware of any fraud in particular. I told them, if you have it, bring it to me. Okay. Biden White House further blamed Republicans for the border crisis. Here we are talking about voter ID laws. The Biden regime officially came out to say officials do not support House Republicans' proposal to have a voter ID law for elections to prevent illegal immigrants from voting as the border crisis has gone on for the entirety of Biden's presidency. Introduced by Congressman Chip Roy, the Safeguard America Voter Eligibility Act, or the SAFE Act, would require states to obtain proof of citizenship in person when registering an individual to vote, and require states to remove anyone who's in the country illegally from existing voter rolls. Wow, that's controversial. So why would the Democrat Party, every single member, oppose it in the House and Senate, and their nitwit president say that he would, in fact, veto it? There's no legitimate objection unless your goal here, and it's not legitimate, is in fact to enshrine illegality and fraud and make it impossible to prove a negative in a court of law. Radical progressive Democrats are using open border policies while also attacking election integrity laws to fundamentally remake America. That's why I'm proud to introduce the SAVE Act with Speaker Johnson and my Republican colleagues, along with the invaluable support of citizens and organizations that recognize we must end the practice of non-citizens voting in our country. Now, the Biden regime said the bill is not needed since there's already a law on the books disallowing non-citizens to vote, and that requiring voter ID will hinder Americans from voting. And then the statement goes on to blame the House Republicans for not voting for the Senate bill and the usual crap. There is no federal law that requires voter ID at the point of voting. None. This has been a slow process now where they have actually completed the race across the finish line that started under Bill Clinton with voter motor. Or motor voter, I guess they called it. Easy registration at your local DMVs and so forth. Even back then, I and a handful of others said this is a disaster. Because the Democrats never stop. Give them a little crack in the door and they kick it wide open. They kick it wide open. Everybody was sitting on the edge of their chairs just about 30 minutes ago. Will Joe Biden be able to give a decent speech in front of NATO? Is this what it's come to? If he can give a speech, one decent speech out of 10, then he's presidential material. Is this what it's come to? We've had a complete cover-up here, and it's still, you can see its remnants, or its entrails. It's still going on. It's still going on. And as I explained last night, the media are trying to decide whether to push him out or get behind him, and the media are split, and the Democrats are split. Because the issue's power. I see some of our friends have now mentioned it on TV, on radio, and even in their social media. It's a good thing they listen. But it's the truth. And we also know the country hasn't been run by this president. It's been run by some kind of a cabal. And we further know that Kamala Harris and the cabinet have no intention of following the Constitution and the 25th Amendment.
Mark Levin. You're listening to the best of Mark Levin.
Wasn't that long ago, America, when both parties agreed that only American citizens should be able to vote in our elections and that they should be able to prove that they are, in fact, American citizens? To do otherwise was not only fraudulent, but was an attack on our franchise. That is, an attack on every legal vote. Then Bill Clinton had an idea with Motor Voter to register as many people as you could at the DMVs and elsewhere as the first chipping away of voter security. And it's never stopped. In fact, when the Democrats took over the House during the Trump presidency, H.R. 1, the very first bill they introduced, was a voting bill that would destroy every single barrier to fraud. States would not be free to have voter ID. States would not be free to clean their rolls. People could vote in precincts that are not their precincts. Every vote would count unless you could prove otherwise. Of course, they had the drop box. They had absentee ballots without signatures, without dates. It was a crime if you were to challenge somebody's vote, even if you knew for sure that they were voting illegally. So when you destroy the sanctity of the vote, you're destroying the right to vote. You've destroyed it. You've destroyed the process. The Democrats do not believe in voting. They believe in control, power, by any means, by all means. And so they will use voter suppression, voter repression, their own history, Jim Crow, segregation, poll taxes, literacy tests, that's them. Turn it on the Republicans, accuse them of that history when it is their history, and then say, when you demand voter ID and you demand that only citizens vote, obviously it's racist, and obviously you're intending to threaten people so they won't vote. So the law becomes a crime, and crime becomes the law. Here's how the Hill newspaper put it today. There was a vote, literally minutes ago, on the SAVE Act, Chip Roy's bill. Safeguard America voter eligibility. The SAVE Act, House Republicans and a handful of Democrats, writes the Hill, approved a bill that seeks to expand proof of citizenship requirements to vote in federal elections and impose voter roll purge requirements on states. Legislation, formerly titled the Safeguard America Voter Eligibility Act, SAVE, cleared the chamber in a 221 to 198 vote, with only 5 Democrats voting yes. Only 5 Democrats. Goes to the Senate, where they write it's all but certain to be ignored amid opposition from Democrats. President Biden has vowed to veto the measure. Voter ID and proof of citizenship. And by the way, clean your rolls. Make sure the people on the rolls actually are citizens. They're not dead. They're not from other countries. They're not illegal aliens. Suddenly this is controversial. Suddenly to stand up and support this is racist. It's the people who are pointing the finger of racism who are the racists. You know, black people know how to vote. Other minorities know how to vote. They have identification. They're required to show identification when they get on an airplane, when they buy booze, cigarettes, a host of other things. What kind of mindset is it in a political party that wants you to believe that because you need to demonstrate that you're an American citizen and you actually have a right to vote, that is racist, that is suppression or repression? The Democrat Party is an evil party that has been sabotaging every one of our institutions, including the franchise, the vote. Illegal aliens, if they vote, they're distorting our system. If people are dead and people are voting for them, they're distorting our system. And 1,000 other connivances that connivers will think of. And why is it that the Democrat Party doesn't oppose any one of them? Instead, they say, you cannot prove, you don't have the evidence, no judge will say that fraud was committed. But as I've said now for several years, when you legalize fraud or you enshrine fraud in the electoral process, there's nothing to prove. It's the process itself that becomes the fraud. You can't prove at drop boxes that ballots are being stuffed into those boxes illegally, illegitimately. There's no camera. There's no security guard. There's nothing. Unless you happen to catch somebody with an iPhone or something. You can't prove that voter harvesting, that is counting votes after the election, that people going into mental institutions or nursing homes aren't filling out ballots for somebody else. How do you prove it? Particularly where a signature may not be required. So the Democrat Party looks at all the voting requirements that have helped this nation through difficult periods and not difficult periods to ensure that there is a real vote, a legitimate vote, and they've gone through the process to destroy every single security system that's in place. There have been interviews. People have gone into the inner city. They've interviewed black people. And they've asked them, do you have a voter identification? Yes, I do. Well, what if you were told that the reason there shouldn't be voter ID is because it'll be discriminatory, racist? And they laugh. I remember extensive interviews being done. Because it's ridiculous. Here we have a growing police state that demands numbers, that demands facial recognition, that demands driver's licenses, that demands all kinds of identification. And then all of a sudden, when it comes to voting, no, that's racist. That's discriminatory. That's unnecessary. That's bureaucratic. Every single House Democrat voted against a voter ID and against forcing states to go through their voter list to ensure that the list is kosher. Every single Democrat in the House voted against it except for 5 of them. 5 of them. And the Biden regime said if it did pass, he would veto it, which means it could never become law because you're not going to get the 2/3 override that you need in Congress. And it's going to die in the Senate anyway, they say. This is the Hill newspaper. Opponents of the bill say its core idea, establishing non-citizen voting as illegal, is redundant. And argue that its provisions will more likely lead to U.S. citizens being denied the right to vote than to preventing votes by foreign nationals. How so? If a voter ID is discriminatory, then why do we have these driver's licenses and other requirements for showing identification? Why do we have a customs service? Why do we have a border patrol? Why do we have a census? Why do you have an Internal Revenue Service? On all those forms, you have to demonstrate you are who you are. In all those interviews, you have to demonstrate you are who you say you are. You have to have your Social Security. You have to have other information. You have to have a passport. You have to have all kinds of stuff. That's what the federal government requires right now, today. And yet when you vote, it's redundant. And then they cite the Hill because they obviously agree with the Democrats. It's a radical left-wing operation anyway. One study by the Brennan Center for Justice found 30 suspected, not confirmed cases of non-citizen voting out of 23.5 million. Now, we know that's not possible. I explained last week, or was it the week before, that virtually every federal entity that a person comes in touch with, they now have voter registration forms that you can fill out if you're getting some kind of government benefit. Period. That don't require an identification. And under the radar, the Biden regime, one of his first executive orders was to direct every department and agency to do everything possible in every way to register people who come into their offices. And most of these offices cater to Democrats and would-be Democrats. That's just the way it is. Vote is 221 to 198. Only 23 majority surplus in votes. Only 23. You know, this caused me to think about Barbara Jordan. Barbara Jordan was a great congresswoman from Houston. Just a brilliant lady. She's a liberal. But she had integrity. And she loved America. And she was a black lady. And she, among others, led this investigation, this study, and issued a report on immigration in this country, because it all gets down to immigration. This is why the border's wide open, and this is why the Democrats, all but 5, voted against voter ID, because they want illegal aliens to vote. And it's impossible after the fact to make a determination. It's just impossible. The Center for Immigration Studies reran an op-ed that she wrote 18 years ago. She was a civil rights leader. Former congresswoman, the first African-American woman elected to Congress from the South. She was the chairwoman of the U.S. Commission on Immigration Reform. She was a great woman. And in this report, what they laid out, the proposals they laid out are common sense proposals that conservatives and Republicans have been arguing for ever since. She talked about a commitment to democratic ideals and constitutional principles. The Americanization ideal, she called it. The Americanization ideal. One person, one vote? What does that mean when we fight constantly over when and where we're allowed to vote and who gets to tabulate the results? Worse, in many precincts, citizenship is not even a prerequisite for voting. This is what she wrote. Do the French ambassador and the Bulgarian head of the International Monetary Fund get to pick the D.C. City Council too? How can we assimilate newcomers to our ideals and principles when our own children don't learn what those vague concepts are, let alone what they entail? Yes. 15 years ago. And then President admitted, I believe in American exceptionalism, just as I suspect that the Brits believe in British exceptionalism and the Greeks believe in Greek exceptionalism, which suggests that exceptionalism is subjective and to a degree jingoistic. That was Obama. But the point is, the Democrat Party is now an American Marxist operation. They say they're protecting the vote. Just remember what I tell you over and over and over again. They're not protecting anything that is traditional, that is instrumental to this republic. Quite the opposite. They will destroy anything that is in their way. They will devour it. They will crush it. The Democrat Party is about the Democrat Party. It's about monopoly power. It has nothing to do with black people, minorities, white people, the right to vote. It's a power grab.
Mark Levin. The Great One makes your weekend even better. This is the best of Mark Levin.
Ladies and gentlemen, the debate about Joe Biden is not whether Joe Biden has dementia or not. He does. The debate about Joe Biden is now whether the Democrat Party can win with him or not, or whether they can win with somebody else. That's the debate. It's not whether Joe Biden is unqualified to serve as president. He is. He's unqualified. Now, there was a time when the Democrats understood this, but of course it went back to 2017 when they were going after Trump. Criminally, impeachment, his taxes, just like they are today. So they had a very low bar for triggering the 25th Amendment, 2017. Our friends at Grabian put together this little montage of Democrats, then the media, back in 2017, calling for the 25th Amendment. Cut one, go.
This is scary. Hashtag 25th Amendment.
The president is not equipped to do the job.
So now they're saying he's mentally incapacitated. And more than 24 Democratic lawmakers are backing a bill that says he should leave office.
Should he be removed from office?
His brain is simply incapable of processing the information, emotionally, psychologically unstable. Initiate proceedings to remove the president.
You and several of your Democratic House colleagues met with a psychiatry professor from Yale, Dr. Bandy Lee. She told CNN today, quote, as the president is unraveling, he seems to be losing his grip on reality and reverting to conspiracy theories.
Dr. Lee and other psychiatrists who've been up to meet with members of Congress.
By the way, we had Dr. Lee on the program. What a complete schmuck. We eviscerated her. She wouldn't come back. And she's nowhere to be heard from now. Whatever happened to Dr. Lee? Go.
Increasingly delusional and paranoid behavior on the part of the president.
Raskin.
The president is dangerous and unable to successfully meet the powers and duties of office. We got serious stuff to deal with, and instead we're caught up every day in what looks like the country debating the
More
mental
Raskin.
health of the president. So it's a very dangerous and unstable situation. The issue is, what is our institutional responsibility as the U.S. Congress? And we've got that under the 25th Amendment. Everybody should go and read it.
No, Trump needs to be medicated and hospitalized at this point, or he is going to just kill all of us.
People are talking about the 25th Amendment, and they're saying he's just not mentally fit to be the president. And I think if you're doing this, I mean, is there a mental fitness problem? We all know the ramifications of nuclear war.
Should Americans be concerned about the president's mental fitness?
This president is not fit.
This is 25th Amendment kind of stuff
that should have already activated the vice president and a majority of the cabinet to remove the president as unfit to serve under the 25th Amendment.
And invoking things like the 25th Amendment. You know, they brought in this Yale psychiatrist.
Watch the president closely. Is there a case to be made for the 25th Amendment?
Specifically under the 25th Amendment, the president's not fit for command.
But, oh, man, he's really having some problems here.
That's where the 25th Amendment thing started to come up.
Fitness for office. Could the 25th Amendment be Trump's downfall? Here's how it works.
They believe the president should be temporarily removed from power. The vice president should become the acting president.
Would Donald Trump pass the Air Force test for personnel working with nuclear weapons?
Absolutely not without further evaluation.
25th Amendment at the moment is the only thing we have.
Just focusing on cognitive, and we'll get into neurological and mental health in just a second. But when we hear Dr. Jackson saying that the president scored a 30 out of 30 on this cognitive test.
What I would have liked to have seen, if there's any suspicion, as I'm sure there is, about his mental status, is to go a little bit further, which could have easily been done. That could have been done by doing an MRI. There's no medical diagnosis of jerk, and that jerk is a condition that disqualifies you from holding office. 25th Amendment hasn't been developed in a way that allows it to be called into invoked if there is serious concern.
The man is crazy. And if he's crazy and incompetent and stupid, then we have to look at the 25th Amendment.
These people are such lying bastards. It's just unbelievable. They're so disgusting. These are people in the media. The media. Tom Pitts. Who's Tom Pitts? He's a Parkinson's doctor. He's so good at it that he was invited by NBC News to comment on what's going on with Joe Biden. And he also says, look, I'm a Democrat. Hat tip free beacon. Listen carefully. Cut 13, go.
It's ironic because he has just such classic features of neurodegeneration. I mean, word finding difficulties, and that's not, I couldn't find the word. That's from degeneration of the word retrieval area.
He's also overcome stuttering, though. Could that be part of that, too?
No, this is not a palatal issue or a speech discrepancy, which is very different from a lemino dysfunction, actual word retrieval, where you pick a similar question or talk around the issue, plus the rigidity, monotone voice.
Wait, go back to that, the rigidity. What do you mean?
Rigidity, loss of arm swing, standing up, Lord methodically. You notice when he turns, it's kind of en bloc turning. It's not a quick turn. So that's one of the hallmarks of Parkinsonism is rigidity and bradykinesia, slow movement. And he has that hallmark, especially with the low voice that said was a cold. Ophonia, a small monotone voice like this over time, is a hallmark of Parkinsonism. I could have diagnosed him from across the mall.
NBC didn't like that. Tom Lambs didn't like that. Cut 14, go.
Well, I also don't, tell me if I'm wrong here, it's very hard to diagnose Parkinson's, isn't it? It's not simple. I mean,
actually, it's very easy. It's one of the easier diseases to diagnose, but go ahead.
It's one of the easier movement disorders to diagnose, actually.
Right,
but it's so clinic. There's very little other. And I'm a Democrat. I always say about this.
Right.
It's just like this guy is not a hard case.
But I've had relatives who have gone through neurological issues, and I've heard that sometimes Parkinson's is not very easy to nail. You have to take a lot of tests.
It's early on if you're just presented with.
Stop. You don't have to take a lot of tests. That's not correct. Go ahead.
Variety of things, or just the cognitive problems. That could be Alzheimer's versus Parkinsonism, and that becomes a little nebulous. But once you start manifesting the hallmark motor symptoms,
right?
Slow movement, rigidity, masked faces, hypophonia. I mean, if a med student did not pick Parkinson's on the test, they'd be remediated.
So let me ask you, if you had, and I know you can't. You have no idea what happened in the White House, but a neurologist coming 8 times in 8 months, does that tell you anything? Is that? I mean, I know you're just sort of speculating here, but does that tell you anything or no?
Well, I mean, I don't know if they're like the best of friends or something, but that's a very specific, he's a movement disorder. That's a subspecialist in exactly what he has. And there's very few young people, like a Marine Guard. Most people would be med boarded out for any type of movement disorder at a young age. Like if you had Huntington's chorea, early onset Parkinson's, dystonia, bad essential tremor, you're usually med boarded out. So I highly doubt there's...
What does that mean, med boarded out?
Med boarded means the military would not let you... If you have seizures, for example, you cannot usually be in the military.
Mm-hmm. Seems pretty straightforward to me. The man is right. Every serious doctor who has a serious medical degree, not one from overseas through the mail system, knows exactly what's taking place here. This is the greatest cover-up in American history, and it's not working anymore. The cover-up broke. The cover-up's been exposed. And so the media, half the media are reacting by pretending they didn't know and demanding that he leave so they can get a Democrat in who they can get elected. That's their view. The other half are dug in. The Mika Brzezinski's and her ilk. They're the headbangers that will fight to the end for many reasons, including the fact that they know Joe Biden and they like him, and that's more important in the country. The Democrat Party, well, they just want to win. And those who think they can't win with Biden, some have come out, not many, only 8 members of the House by my count, and 1 senator, this guy Mike Bennett from Colorado, not another senator. The others are equivocating, mumbling, as if they have Bidenitis. But there's simply no doubt that Joe Biden has dementia. That's not the debate, whether he can perform well in one speech or whether he can perform well in one press conference. That's not the test. My God, America, we're talking about President of the United States. We're talking about weapons that can blow humanity off the face of the earth. We're talking about life and death decisions. We're talking about the well-being of the American people, our culture, our society. We're talking about our enemies and how they look upon us and how this provokes them to act against us and our allies. Why do we put up with this? Joe Biden's one man. That's it. He's a man who's always been hungry for power. He's a psychological disaster, a pathological liar from the day he could speak. And so we're all supposed to stand by and watch. The 25th Amendment should have been triggered a long time ago by the Vice President of the United States and a majority of the cabinet. But they haven't even discussed it. And Kamala Harris won't go anywhere near it because she's too ambitious. She'd rather wait her turn, so to speak, as if a vice president is automatically the next president. Clyburn all but said that because he is a historical illiterate. He's a moron. So there's an expert. We don't even need an expert. He's a Democrat. And everybody's saying the same thing. You don't send a Parkinson neurological expert into the White House 8 times while he's checking out other people, and his point is well taken. It's not military personnel. They just keep lying. It's not Secret Service personnel. It's Biden. Because he has it. Because he's ill. I don't say that tongue-in-cheek. He's ill. He's sick. He doesn't cut it. The Democrat Party did this to us. The media have done this to us. They can attack Trump all they want, and they have, and they will. Destroying our justice system, our legal system. Destroying the impeachment clause. Shredding constitutional protections, due process, equal protection, freedom of speech, the right to competent counsel, excessive fines, you name it. They've thrown everything. And so they're not going to back off. Not now, not ever. So we, the people, need to take our country back. The media are the enemy, not because we say so, because they do so. The Democrat Party is the enemy, not because we say so, but because they hate us, and they hate the country.
Mark Levin. We're giving you nothing but the best of Mark Levin.
Now I want to hand it over to the president of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin. President Putin. He's going to beat President Putin. President Zelensky. I'm so focused on beating Putin, we got to worry about it.
Yeah,
anyway,
we understand. Yeah, that's just...
President,
I'm better.
You are a hell of a lot better.
You know, folks, it's very important, now more than ever, that you think for yourselves. That you use your own noggin, your own common sense, your own experience to sort through all of this. There are a lot of agendas flying around here, none of which are for the country. We're being told by the media, good, bad, and indifferent, that this is make or break. Now, first of all, he's not going to all of a sudden be Albert Einstein. But what do they mean this is make or break? So if he has a decent press conference, he no longer has dementia? What does this mean? Or if he has a bad press conference, that just underscores that he has dementia? And the press, of course, are going to use this as an opportunity, I predict, because it'll happen, to try and recover from the destruction they've done to themselves. You see, the only people who have a worse poll rating than Biden would be Kamala Harris and the American media. The American people detest the American media because the American media is like Pravda. It's like Al Jazeera. To watch Jake Tapper, to watch the conga line of miscreants and malcontents, the reprobates in the media, the Democrat operatives, and the ideologues, all of a sudden, feign anger that they were lied to, is really quite an act. The media, as it turns out, are filled with drama queens. They were colluders. They were conspirators. In 2000, when Biden was hiding out in his basement, campaigning from his basement, all the way through the minute before the debate, They are responsible for the predicament the Democrat Party is in today. Not America, the Democrat Party. Now, America is in a predicament to the extent that our enemies see that we have a president who has dementia. And so this is provocative. And I worry about the next half year if this man remains in office. But to show you how unserious the America Pravda, the America Al Jazeera are, to show you how unserious the Hollywood Clown Show, headed by George Clooney and his ilk, to show you how unserious the devious, diabolical, evil, America-hating Democrat Party is. None of them are calling for the 25th Amendment to remove Joe Biden immediately. Because their interests, as I've been saying day in and day out, are for the Democrat Party, not America. The Democrat Party, in their view, has to reshape America, has to rejigger America, has to turn America inside out. Only then is America worthwhile. Only then should there be allegiance to America. When a monopoly party, a Democrat Party, takes over, only then is the country worth defending. The New York Slimes, it's quite a remarkable institution, what they've gotten away with, is a corporation. It is a corporation that has a board of directors. It is a corporation that has executives. It is a corporation that has employees. And rather than making widgets, it produces barely newspapers. It is a bankrupt enterprise that was saved by a billionaire, among others, from Mexico. Just as the Washington Post is a bankrupt enterprise saved by a billionaire who founded Amazon, Bezos. It cannot survive on its own as a news operation. But the New York Times has put out 2 editorials demanding that Joe Biden drop out of the race. Not that he drop out of the presidency. No. That he drop out of the race. We all saw what happened at the debate. He can't win. The problem is he can't govern. We have a Politburo, a cabal that's governing. That is abundantly clear. But no, we can't do that. We like his policies. We like the Politburo and the cabal, whoever they are. They're doing a hell of a job for the American Marxist movement, the Marxists and the Islamists. He's the most radical president in American history, whether he knows it or not. That's good. But we're afraid he can't win. So now the New York Slimes, realizing that they have to do more than beat down Joe Biden, has an enormously long editorial. 1, just hold on, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 printed pages, size 10 font. Donald Trump is unfit to lead, by the editorial board. The editorial board. What is this editorial board? It's a gaggle of about a dozen, maybe 18. You could look it up on Google. Radical left-wing kooks who get together and they write their editorials. Extremists. America-hating, Marxist, Islamist revolutionaries. And so when they say the New York Times has said, you're talking about a dozen to maybe a score of individuals. They said it. That's all. What is the New York Times has said? The New York Times is a newspaper or a website. It doesn't say anything. Can't speak, can't hear, doesn't have a brain. And I notice when they hide behind the editorial board, they don't list, as they should in every instance, the members of the editorial board and their backgrounds. Again, you can Google it. They're all radical kooks. And the names of the individuals who've written this particular editorial, because all score of them haven't written the editorial. It's a couple of them. And it is a vicious, vile hit job from a newspaper that promoted Stalin, Hitler, and Castro, telling us that Donald Trump is unfit to lead. A newspaper that has promoted Joe Biden. All these years, lying to the readership. All these years. Now pretending that they're righteous. They've never been righteous. They can't be righteous. It is a corrupt corporation. Through and through. From one century to the next. They write here, the editorial board is a group of opinion journalists. Well, what is an opinion journalist, Mr. Producer? There's no such thing as an opinion journalist in the profession. Unfortunately, there is no profession, so they're all opinion journalists. What does that mean? That means their opinion, their advocacy, their ideology is the news. So they confess to it right here. A group of opinion journalists whose views are informed by experience, research, debate, and certain long-standing values. It is separate from the newsroom. They're opinion journalists. How can they be separate from the newsroom that's filled with journalists? So they don't even know how to write. They're basically illiterate, and they're moronic. And so they attack Donald Trump, who next week will be nominated as the Republican nominee for President of the United States. And I'm not going to bother reading this to you. Why should I? They've written more about Donald Trump in this editorial, listen to me, than they did about the Holocaust since the 1930s to 1945. They spent more words, more ink, attacking Donald Trump in this one editorial today than they did in a decade of Nazi control over Germany and the extermination of the European Jews. They've spent more time in this editorial, words and ink, trashing Donald Trump than they did Joseph Stalin in 1932 when he was slaughtering the Ukrainians. They've spent more words and ink in this editorial, trashing Donald Trump, than they've ever spent trashing Fidel Castro. And yet, they claim a self-serving mantle to dictate our politics, to dictate our governance, to tell us who should be the nominee of which party, who should not be the nominee of which party. Because, truth be told, this isn't a true American First Amendment media organization. This is a Marxist, thuggish, fascist-like propaganda operation. And that's why the editorial board members hide behind the phrase, the editorial board.